California, Mr. Bond.
Well, here we are again.
The music it
Da-da.
fades, and we are back.
We are back. Well, we're actually doing this in reverse because we had an interview a couple days ago that went very well. So this is the introduction. So we're traveling through time to the start of this a couple days afterwards. So here we are.
The magic martini has sent us back.
Yes, there you go. Wow, look at that. Woo.
Special.
So our interview today is with Bond historian Steven Jay Rubin, who wrote the James Bond films, and I always hold this up because it's always at my desk, the James Bond Movie Encyclopedia. He's also a very prolific internet host, which he'll talk about as well, about movies and all of that. But that it was really great. He was super
He
nice.
was so cool. I have to get I have my version of the James Bond Encyclopedia that Steve wrote is from I forget what year specifically.
From the early 90s, probably.
Man,
That's the one that I had.
Pierce Brosnan
I
wasn't even
one.
James Bond yet. It just goes up to Timothy
that's in
Dalton.
some boxes somewhere. I just bought the new one. So
I got to get my parents to find it and send it back. But yeah, I gotta have him autograph that one.
Yeah, I'll get him at Thunderball. So
yeah,
because he'll be there at Thunderball. I actually when he came for Dr. No, I quickly asked him to sign mine, so he did though. So, but he couldn't be nicer. Awesome. Very, very, very nice. Very enthusiastic. Yeah. He's just an enthusiastic fan at the heart of things.
Yeah,
so,
and like you guys will see, I mean, he's so easy to talk to, and
yeah.
And when you come out to our Thunderball screening, if you see him, catch him, say hi.
Why would he be there? What's going to happen at Thunderball?
Well,
we talk about it a little bit in the interview, but
just a tad. And this isn't really
stay until the end. Stay until the end.
Yes, you got to stay all the way until the end to get all the juicy details.
So,
but we'll give you a little preview here at the beginning at our July screening of Thunderball for Thunderball's 60th anniversary. Not only will Steve be there to moderate and run the Q&A, but the Q&A and special introduction, who will also be signing autographs. Fiona Volpe herself, Luciana Paluzzi, is going to be at the Thunderball screening, and we are so excited.
Very excited. Yeah.
Thank you, Luciana. So, and as the closer we get to that screening, we'll talk more about that. Yeah.
Living Daylights is the next one, which is
right, May 27th.
May 27th, actually. So far, Richard Shankman is going to be speaking. He was the original editor of Bondage magazine, which is the very first Bond fanzine. Right. He was like a teenager when he began it. He's a film producer and writer now, so but still at the core a big Bond fan. So
yeah,
he's going to talk because he was on the set of Living Daylights. Met Timothy Dalton many times. He was on License to Kill as well, I think. So we'll talk. I mean, if you come, I'm sure he'll talk about it. But
I'm sure he's got awesome stories.
He approached Cubby Broccoli as a teenager, and Cubby Broccoli gave him full access to everything, which would not happen now. But I mean, he came into it at a perfect time back then because there were no Bond fanzines, and he did it by himself for years, up until I think the late 80s or early 90s, until then it folded. But because he had to have a job and go on to film production and all that, it became if you're doing one fanzine, I think by yourself, it gets very hard. So
that's in the days of where it's all printed, nothing's digital,
mimeographed,
something
so that'll be happening, and we're also working on some other things for that night as well. So fingers crossed on one, but we're not going to say. But I don't know. So we'll no hints because I don't want anything.
Nothing.
I don't want to get people's hopes up.
Nobody's saying nothing.
So but what else? What else? Oh, why don't you tell them about this Sunday?
This Sunday is our Richard Maibaum remembrance and luncheon.
Yeah.
Where we're all going to be meeting at 12 noon here at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where Richard Maibaum was laid to rest. And we're going to be reading selections of his essays, interviews, and folks like David Zaritsky and Joe Darlington. And who else do we have, Neil, that's going to be contributing some
Oh,
remembrances.
Steven Jay Rubin as
Steven
well,
Jay Rubin actually is going to
and
be sharing some
yeah,
film.
and some other surprises that were, some other people that we're still working on as well, though. So,
Yeah.
and yeah, just gonna be a very casual, good time. We have a good group of people. We're gonna the cemetery is very okay with this, so there's so you know I if you're interested, you can please RSVP soon. So
Yeah.
yeah, you can write
This
me
is
at
one you just can't show up at.
yeah, no, because the cemetery doesn't want 100 people there. So,
Yeah.
so you can write me at liveandlet007 at gmail.com. That's liveandlet007 at gmail.com. And let me know you'll be there. Yeah, so I can let them know. So,
And you might recognize Hollywood Forever
yeah,
from some television and movies. It's been featured in some things. Johnny Ramone
yeah,
of the Ramones is famously buried there, and he has a very cool statue
yeah.
of him playing the
Many
guitar.
people are there. Yeah.
Yeah, people like Chris Cornell, Anton Yelchin, Burt Reynolds,
The
some
newest
other.
resident is David Lynch, actually. So
Yes,
that was
yes,
just announced, and Paul Rubens as well. So
yeah,
who's Pee Wee? So yeah, so it's actually just a fun place to walk
yeah.
around. So, but I've been going there for years and years. That was one of my first stops when I moved here in 2008, and I think. It took me 15, 16 years to realize that Richard Maybaum was there. I had
Mm.
no idea. I mean, it's a very hard grave to find. I didn't I mean I had to really look for it one day. So
I
but
never knew he was there. The times that
yeah, I
I've
didn't
been
know either.
there, I
Yeah.
remember I found when I found John Huston's grave. If
Oh, yeah,
you've
that
ever
was hard to
seen
find. Yeah, I've been there.
that one's like I kind of stumbled across it. It was, for
Yeah,
such a famous,
yeah,
legend, Hollywood legend. His grave is a little tricky to to
yeah.
come across.
There's a lot of great. I mean, there's a lot of people there, and it's also just very. They treat it like a park as well, so they
Yeah,
don't mind people. Some of the cemeteries in LA are very against like celebrity hunters, and
yeah,
they'll kick you out. But I mean, they're very friendly there, and they want
yeah.
people to. Well, they
They
do
do
like
a lot
movie
of
nights
events
there.
there too.
Yeah, they do like
They do
movie
like movie
nights
screenings and
and
stuff.
yoga. They have like yoga days there as
Yeah,
well. Yeah, so
I last time I was there, my when my brother came to out to LA to visit, we walked around and just checked the place out. I showed him around, and people were having picnics.
yeah.
So, and it
Yeah,
is
I
it's a
have done that.
beautiful.
I've actually done that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hey, this is the one time you can have a picnic with Burt Reynolds.
Yes, it is. Yeah. But I will say
Yeah.
the organizers were very nice. I wrote them and they were like, "Yeah, sure." So once we got business done, one of the head of events there, a guy named Jay, was like, "By the way, have you seen this website of like movie art?" And it was all like Bond movie art, and it was really,
Oh wow, yeah.
really, really, really cool. So I did ask him. I said, "Are you a Bond fan?" He said, "I'm not like a massive one," but he said, "Growing up, The Spy Who Loved Me was a definitive film for me." So that was
Oh
really fun.
wow, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Even casual Bond fans will have a Bond film
yeah,
that's,
yeah,
so important and inspirational and
yeah,
influential in their lives.
yeah. So if you want to show up, write me. You'll see us. I mean, I give all the directions on where to go. I have to fit it in my car, but I have to bring our traditional James Bond life-size cutout. So figured
Yes.
that'll be a good.
Sir Sean will be joining us.
Yeah, I have to fit him in my car because last time it was hard. So I'll have to figure things out this time.
he
So
he doesn't come to the screenings because he doesn't fit in the
uh,
Waymo.
he does not at all. That
Well,
would that would
maybe
never.
we can put him in the front seat since there's no driver,
I don't know. I have
and
a
it can
feeling if
look
I
like
tried
Sean
that,
Connery's driving the
I'm feeling if I tried that, the car would like take off with me trying to like put it in the back. And you remember my last time with the Waymo
Yeah,
there.
there's that. We don't want any more accidents
I yeah yeah
involving.
yeah yeah. So
No, thank you.
yeah.
And
Anyway.
I'm sure you don't either. So,
One of our well, I'll just tell one of our last Bond events. Not many people know. No, I'm not going to get into it. We were all done great martini night, and my Waymo was taking off. Had parked about a block away, and I couldn't find it. And like everybody, so I ran. I ran to the Waymo in my dress shoes, and the sidewalk got a little wonky and I tripped and I broke my arm. So there we go. I broke my arm. Don't worry, got to the hospital. This is a few months back, and as you can see, I had surgery. So there we go. I only bring it up because I don't wear my arm band that much, so I don't want people. I'm sure people have seen it though, but I'm all okay now. But that was don't want to repeat that. So so
As James Bond said, I'm glad to see the arm. Smithers is yeah.
yeah, it's all good. So there we go though.
We're glad
So
you've mended.
I did mend, and yeah, I mended pretty. I mean, it's up and down,
It was
I
weird because
mended
I
pretty
remember I
quickly.
didn't see you too long after that,
Yeah.
and it was because you didn't have the calves. It was just kind of like that weird arm wrap, and
Yeah.
I was
It's all
expecting
good.
like a whole like
They don't do. Yeah, anyway,
apparatus.
I don't want to get into the whole thing about that.
Yeah.
So, let's just say Q's workshop fixed up my arm slightly.
You
So
did a beautiful job.
yeah. So anyway, come one, come all, we'll have fun.
Yeah, and
And
we're going
and
to the Cat
don't
and Fiddle after for lunch and
yeah,
cocktails.
Ken
So
Fiddle. It's a very British pub. Yeah, good food, good drink. They're all prepared for us
yeah,
to be
we had
there.
our
So
Christmas party there,
we did. Yeah.
and they learned not to play the "Never Say Never Again" theme song.
Yes, they did. Yeah. I don't think there weren't many people there that night. I think this one though we'll have a Sunday crowd there, so it'll. But
Yeah.
I think they're going to give us the outdoor part again though. That's what they
Okay.
told me. So
Yeah.
it should be good, guys. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Weather's going to be nice too.
yes, it will. All right. Well, is I think we covered everything, right?
Yeah, I think now is time
Just
to go into our
segue.
interview with Steve Rubin.
Yeah. So enjoy it, and we'll speak to you guys soon. Okay. Thanks a lot, guys.
Ciao.
Thanks, man. Okay. So I don't know. So thank you again. We appreciate it, and I'm just going to start with the questions if you're all set.
I'm
Ready?
ready. I'm ready. I put up a
Just
little
gonna go right
thunderball.
into it.
I'm just
I
going to
put a
dive
little.
into it.
I put a little thunderball up actually
Oh
for
yeah,
Oh,
it's
the
nice.
nice.
anniversary. Looking forward to July. It should be
Oh
fun.
yeah,
Oh, it's
yeah,
gonna be great.
yeah. She's really into it, so it's going to be a really special night. So
Yeah.
it's going to be really fun.
I'm
So
gonna probably see her on Thursday because actually Friday morning they're showing
that's
Thunderball
right.
at the TCM Festival.
Hmm.
Yeah, I read that. Yeah,
Yeah, and
That's cool. Yeah, I got her email through another member, and we didn't know if how she would react. And but actually, Steve had met her before as well, so she's very down
Yeah.
for it. So it should
We
be
had hung
great.
out a
So,
couple of years ago, and I said, I don't know if you remember me, but she remembered me, and she's been super cool and just so sweet, and like everything you'd hope a Bond girl would be.
absolutely,
yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, cool. Well, let me just begin. Okay. Just wanted to welcome Steven Jay Rubin, very well-known James Bond author and historian, author of the James Bond films and the James Bond Movie Encyclopedia, which I have a copy right here. Thank you for joining us. This is our fourth podcast, and you're our first guest. So thank you. So
I'm thrilled to be here.
okay,
Congratulations.
yeah, I know.
It's
So I
always
guess
good to be first at something, right?
I know it
Oh,
definitely is.
absolutely.
Yeah. So what was your initial exposure to James Bond? When did you first fall in love with Bond?
Well, I tell this story often. I think it's a pretty good story. My father would go on business trips. I'm a West LA guy. I grew up in West LA, and he'd go over the Southwest. He was in steel cable distribution, so working with a lot of construction companies, et cetera. And my dad loved Westerns. He was always reading Westerns, watching Westerns, and he would bring Westerns home for me to read. And I said, no, thank you. There were like 27 Western shows on the air. I was getting my fill. But one day he came home and threw a paperback on my desk with a picture of a naked woman on the cover, covered in gold paint.
Mm.
And I said to him, "What is that?" I was all of 11. He said, "No, it's an interesting story. You might like it." So I cracked open Goldfinger and was immediately fascinated with phraseology I'd never heard before, reading the Hardy Boys and Tom Swift, etc. And that happened to be early '64. And that Christmas, we got a great Christmas present. We got Goldfinger. So when I went to see that movie, like a lot of us, I just fell in love with the whole Bond world. And it was kind of cool that I had read the book first and I could see the changes, and there were very dramatic changes. I didn't get a lot of it. I was only 11, but I really loved it. And I think the moment when Q introduces him to the Aston Martin, it's like a big wow moment for 11-year-olds. So that became the beginning of Bond. And then the following year, it's kind of hard to believe that a Bond movie followed the next year. Now
Yeah.
we're waiting
Yeah.
6 years for Bond movies. And a movie the size of Thunderball comes out, and that was off the charts. Those were in the days when Life magazine did a whole cover on it, Look magazine. I mean, Bond was as big as movies could get, and I was caught up in all of that. So that was the beginning of Bond for me.
What was well, I guess in retrospect, what is your favorite Bond actor and your favorite Bond film?
Well, it's changed over the years. It used to be Sean Connery all the way. The axiom is that you usually embrace the Bond that you grow up with.
Mm.
In my case, I was so pleased with Daniel Craig. I thought that should adjust my favorite list and say that Goldfinger and Casino Royale are now tied as my favorite Bond movies, and Sean Connery and Daniel Craig are tied as well.
Those are good
Oh, wow.
choices.
Steve, I have a question
Yeah.
real quick that just popped into my head, if you don't mind. When you were talking about going to see Goldfinger when you were a kid, and my dad used to have the Odd Job action figure that you'd pull his arm back and the hat would go flying. Did you have any of the toys of the time? Any of those like the cars or any of the figures?
I didn't. I didn't. I think I was still trapped in the world of Civil War battlefield, Fort Apache, Marine Beachhead, the Alamo. I mean, all of my figures were related to great battles. I grew up I don't know what it was because I'm a pretty peaceful guy, but I was obsessed with war stuff, war movies. My very first book before I got into Bond was called Combat Films, American Realism, 1945 to 1970.
Oh,
My
wow.
film school, I didn't go to film school. I was a history major at UCLA. My film school was interviewing filmmakers after I finished college. I interviewed all the guys who made the great war films.
Mm. Oh, wow.
And there were crossovers. I mean, there were people who had done war movies that later went into Bond. But yeah, so I think for me, I was a writer at UCLA. I was a staff writer on the Daily Bruin. I started to see my name in print. So my kind of thing after college was to be a writer. I soon discovered that I couldn't make a living as being a writer. That was a nice goal, but I had a series of odd jobs until I came back from a Europe trip in 77, and someone suggested I leave resumes at PR agencies,
Mm.
being a writer. Now, I didn't know anything about PR at all, but I got a job with a PR agency as their staff writer. Actually, I also had been hired by UA, the same company that made the Bond movies, to promote on the road for a year their remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the
That
That's
Phil
neat.
Philip
Kaufman.
Kaufman movie?
Yeah,
Oh, nice.
I went to every science fiction convention in the world in the US.
That's a great
It's
one.
so funny. I went down to Comic-Con in San Diego. In those days, 500 people would show up.
Wow. That sounds nice.
Lot different, lot different. So yeah, so I got into PR, and then working in this agency, this lady used to come in who was a unit publicist. And I had no idea what that was, but I soon learned it was actually a member of the movie crew. And through a series of events, I became a feature unit publicist. I worked on films from 1981 through 92 for about 11 years.
Oh,
I did Pretty in Pink. I was on this.
wow.
It's so
Oh,
funny.
wow.
Being the war guy, I interviewed with Jerry Bruckheimer to be the unit publicist on Top Gun, but the studio assigned me to Pretty in Pink instead.
Oh, wow.
But I always did the sequel to a good movie. I did the kind of crummy sequel. I did Eddie and the Cruisers 2. I
Mm.
did Weekend at Bernie's 2.
Oh, okay. There you
I
go.
did
Classic.
Porky's 2.
All classics.
And I did Honey, I Blew Up the Kid.
Ah. Nice.
So
that's
it
pretty
was
cool.
fun. It actually was a good living, and being a unit publicist is a great job because when you're in the office doing work, everybody on the set assumes you're doing work, and when you're on the set, everybody in the office assumes you could doing work. So you could goof off a little bit. But I was very dedicated. I was actually a pretty aggressive unit publicist. I got my actors to do a lot more than they normally wanted to do. The axiom there is that actors, when they're acting, have no interest in doing publicity. When the movie comes out, go to me. But that's not the way publicity works. When you have a captive audience like that, you've got to get as much PR done during filming because you have no idea where the actors will be in a
Mhm.
year or two.
Yeah.
So I would actually worked with a still photographer, and I actually had the power after a shot was done on the set. I'd say to the first AD, I need the set for 30 seconds. And
Mhm.
they would give me the set to get a still
Oh,
because
wow.
your still photographer often is not in a very good position to
Mhm.
get the still that becomes an important still. So that was fun. That was a lot of fun. I got to meet a lot of
That
interesting
sounds
people.
fun. Yeah.
Wow.
Um, do you miss that job, or I mean, is there anything
I
about that
miss
that you
the
miss?
camaraderie.
Oh, really?
I,
Okay.
I love being on film sets, and I'm actively writing movies right now with the hope of actually getting them made. And I've produced 5 films. I've
Mhm.
produced 3 features and 2 documentaries. So I've had a taste of being on my own set,
Mhm.
working as a feature film producer. That kind of supersedes everything else I want to do right now. And what I've been doing is I've been writing comedy.
Oh,
Comedy
cool.
has almost completely disappeared
Yeah, it has.
from the world of movies. You get an occasional streaming comedy, but my writing partner Billy Reback, who's an award-winning writer, was one of the lead writer producers on Home Improvement, the Tim Allen series.
Mhm.
Billy and I are always bemoaning the fact that you look at the list of movies that opens every week, they're very seldom a comedy.
Yeah, very hardcore dramatic films. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know. Um, so can you tell us how the James Bond films came into your life? How did that start? How did that form?
Well, that first book I mentioned earlier, Combat Films, was
Yeah.
a huge success. I sold 500 copies.
Okay.
I figured
Oh, that's
at
good.
that rate, I should go back to doing something else. But I was, that time, I certainly was following the Bonds. Certainly, we moved into the Roger Moore era. I was aware of it. I had read John Brosnan's book, James Bond in the Cinema, which was the first book ever written about the Bond movies. But what
Mhm.
had happened in the interim was I had become a staff writer for Cine Fantastique
Mhm.
magazine in Chicago, where I had kind of done something that they was kind of unusual at the time. I was doing these kind of forensic behind the scenes retrospectives on 1950s science fiction films like The Day the Earth Stood Still and Forbidden Planet. And I was getting a lot of attention for the original research of actually going and finding as many of the living participants. So it dawned on me that no one had done that with the Bonds. No one actually had sat down with Cubby
Mhm.
or Harry or any of the filmmakers to do a what I had done for Cine Fantastique, which was a behind the scenes history. So I started by approaching Cubby Broccoli. I had
Wow.
just finished my work on combat films, so I had a little bit of history in being a film historian. I must have caught him on a good day. I got an interview with him,
Wow, that's
and
pretty cool.
I actually featured that recently on my own podcast. If anybody wants to actually hear that original interview with Cubby from
Sure.
1977, it's on my podcast. I'll mention it at the end of the show.
Yeah.
But uh, not only did he give me an interview where he talks a lot about his early life and certainly the beginning of the Bonds, but he offered to introduce me to Michael Wilson.
Wow.
So that summer, I went over to London and I spent 3 weeks in London, a lot of it at Eon, where they opened the file drawers to me.
Oh, that's cool.
And
Oh
I,
my
I had the
God.
call, I had the call sheets on the first 10 films. So when you're trying to put
Oh,
together a forensic history of what they were shooting when, I had it right in front of me. So it was a
Wow,
huge,
nice.
huge thing.
wow.
And then I went around and interviewed everybody I could find. I had arrived in London just as they wrapped Spy Who Loved Me. So I didn't see anything. The Jonah set was completely empty.
Oh.
Oh.
No nuclear submarine.
Wow.
But the funny thing is, I was kind of in good stead at the moment. So Michael and Ken Adam drove me out to Pinewood in
Wow.
Ken's Rolls. I felt like I was a member of the royal family. And we watched the first cut of The Spy Who Loved Me.
Wow,
Huge.
that's
It
pretty cool.
was so it hadn't just wrapped because obviously they had to cut the film together, but it was nearing completion. So it was the first time I saw it, and it was great. It was great.
Were there things in that first version that didn't end up in the final version that you
I
remember?
don't
Or
think so. I think it was pretty much the
yeah.
final cut. All I remember after I left London, I hooked up with a friend of mine and we backpacked across Europe. And I remember being in Spain in a taxi cab and I heard the Carly Simon song
Uh,
on the
oh,
radio. I
that's
said, "Hey,
cool.
that's the spy who loved me."
Oh, because I was going to ask if the version you saw, if it had the music yet, if it had the score attached to it.
Did. It did. Oh
Oh,
yeah. The
wow.
opening score, that wonderful opening song. Yeah, no, that was and that opening sequence with Rick
That's great.
Sylvester skiing off the mountain was just,
Yeah.
I mean, you're stunned by that. I mean, it was pretty impressive.
I
Every
think
time
that
the ski hits the canopy, every time I watch it, even now, when that one lone
yeah.
ski hits the canopy as it opens, I still catch my breath because I expect it to just go diving right in or something, you know?
I
I
think
spent a
that
lot of time on that film covering the behind the scenes history because,
it's great.
as you know, it was not based on an Ian Fleming
Yeah.
novel, even though there is a
Mm.
book titled The Spy Who Loved Me, has nothing to do with the story they came up with. So they probably went through more drafts on that movie than any other Bond movie. In fact, I think in my book I could say there were 8 or 9 writers on it and some pretty famous ones. And then of course and it's funny. After all of that work, the movie still plays as a remake of You Only Live Twice.
Yeah, in
Yeah,
a
it
way,
is.
yeah. And
I
then
th
they kind of do it again with Moonraker.
yeah.
Yeah, kind
it,
of.
it works.
It works. Spectacle.
I
Do you
think
know
that
anything about the John Landis script, the work that he did on Spy?
I don't think I read it, but I know he was one of the writers. There's so many hands in these movies. On a completely separate discussion, I was writing. I now write occasionally for Cinema Retro in New
hmm
York.
Yep.
Hmm.
And I did a story on the making of Bridge at Remagen, which was a World War II movie from
hmm
'68. And going down to look at the collection at SC, I found a draft by Rod Serling of all
Oh
people.
wow. Oh, that's cool.
Oh,
So there's always interesting people involved in writing. And no, but I don't know much about John Landis's.
Mhm. Was there any when you were writing the book, did you find anybody people were open to speak with you? Were there people that didn't want to speak with you or
I got to everybody I could get
okay.
to, and they were
Okay.
so enthusiastic. I felt like, in a lot of ways, I was the first person
Sure.
to really approach this as a formal historian. And I think that's what impressed Cubby, that I wasn't just trying to get rich on a little, picture book, just trying to, to steal their thunder. I was actually working as a full-fledged film historian with, an attitude to get the story correct. That's what happened. That's unfortunately the problem with my relationship with Cubby, and I've told this story many times, is that I made the mistake of sharing my interviews with him. I was
Mhm.
so excited after interviewing Terrence Young, Peter Hunt, and Richard Maybaum. The information was so fresh. Like I said, it was information that nobody had ever gathered. I said, I'm going to show this to Cubby.
Mm.
It had the exact opposite effect. He didn't like what
oh,
they were saying. He disagreed with what they were saying. It finally, he said, I can't get involved in this book because I'll be correcting myself to the end of time. These people aren't correct.
Mm.
So he walked away from the project. And I didn't think it was that big a deal because I had finished my
Yeah.
research. But then I got a letter from UA saying if I used one still photograph from the Bond
Mm.
movies, I'd be sued. And that
oh,
was
Yikes.
quite a shot fired across my bow.
oh,
Fortunately,
man.
and I looked at and I'd already gathered all my photos. I had 227 photos. I ended up taking the ones owned by UA, and I had 3 photos left.
Oh, oh wow.
Oh,
Um, but I started to put my head to, I started to get the idea that maybe there are photos that they don't own. And my first big coup is I went to New York and I went to the Associated Press, and they have a photo library that you can, as a civilian, you can purchase photos from their library. I happened to ask them, do you have a file on James Bond? And they brought out a thick file of Bond photos. These are the typical publicity
Mm.
stills that the studio sends over to press. And they say on the back, official AP wire photo. So I could purchase that. And as long as I put in the book that it was an AP wire photo, I could use it. So I started putting back in a lot of Bond photos from the various
Nice.
movies. And then I kind of did a little bit of, kind of hem stitching. For instance, I went to NASA and I got shots of the space shuttle for the Moonraker
Nice.
chapter.
Yeah.
It's the same shuttle.
Yeah, no one will know.
And then glass-drawn motorboats gave me some photos of motorboats for Live and Let Die, and
That's cool.
so I had to kind of stitch in a lot of things, but people really loved the book. I mean, I was so happy with it. It sold very well, and then it spawned a sequel in the first one was published in 81, the second was published in 83, and I added in Octopussy and Never Say Never Again, and then about 7 years later, Contemporary Books of Chicago. They had success with the Marilyn Monroe Encyclopedia and Elvis Encyclopedia. They asked me would I do a Bond encyclopedia.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
So that was fun, actually. It was writing an encyclopedia is actually kind of a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle because you're constantly adding information, which you, by the way, could not do prior to the invention of computers.
Hmm.
Because if I had to sit there and had to reorganize the
Yeah.
text every time I add, in fact, it would take 1,000 years to write that book. But with computers, you can just reorganize yourself instantly, and that's what I did.
Did you write the whole thing, or did you have researchers with you for the encyclopedia?
I wrote everything.
Wow, that's great.
Oh,
Wow. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
I always wondered that because it's
and
pretty
was it
in depth.
was that a linear process? Did you just say, okay, I'm starting with,
A to Z.
yeah.
Well, the first thing you do is you get out your legal pad and you watch every movie. And every time a fact is mentioned, you write down that fact. So, like, for instance, Dr. No, Strangways. Obviously, John Strangways is in the S section. It starts from the very beginning. Uh, Everything. And it's funny because the encyclopedia I did for contemporary incorporated a lot of stuff like signs and it's really real minutia. When I did the latest edition just a few years ago after No Time to Die, I culled back a lot of that stuff. I focused more on as much information as I could put in about the performers. So
Mm.
you get a little mini bio on everybody involved with the Bonds. So
Oh.
it's full of information on the people. And then things have changed. Now, if you get a publicity still and you're working on an historical work, you don't have to worry about the studio bothering you because it's called fair use.
Ah.
You're making a point. So I have 400 photos in the latest edition of the Bond book, many of them in color. And there you have it right there.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
didn't pay a dime for my
It looks
photos.
great.
That's
Wow.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
originally, when Cubby had told you that he had issues with the interviews you were showing him, and this can also kind of seeg into because we're curious about the Criterion uh, commentaries that have been cropping up lately. Do you think that when they said you can't use the photos, and do you think that they were maybe hoping you would kind of abandon the project and not follow through with it?
Perhaps. I should mention one other incident which really killed my relationship with them, which was entirely not my fault.
Mm.
As I mentioned, I was writing for Cinefantastique, and Fred Clark, the editor, was a good friend of mine. And when he heard I was having all these problems, he took out an ad in CFQ with Cubby's photograph in a gun sight,
Ooh.
saying, "Who is this producer and why does he want this book stopped?" Without
Oh,
consulting me. He had
yikes.
never even thought to ask me if this is cool. Well, I
Whoa.
was walking across the parking lot at the
Oh
Thalia
man.
building on MGM, and I bumped into Michael Wilson.
Oh,
He stared daggers down at me. He said, "That was a real cheap shot, Steve. We want nothing to do with you anymore."
Oh
uh,
So
my
basically,
God.
Fred, may his soul rest in peace, but Fred killed my relationship in that. Now,
Oh.
interestingly, let's see, that was probably almost 40 years ago.
Mm.
And I've had almost no contact with them, but I actually recently wrote a letter to Barbara, and they know who I am because I keep publishing these encyclopedias, and she couldn't have been nicer.
okay.
Actually,
Oh.
I pitched her on a comedy, one of our
Oh,
comedies,
wow,
because
that's
she's getting
good.
into other
Hey.
movies, and she said she's booked for 2 years, but she couldn't have been nicer, and that was nice to hear.
That's
Oh.
good.
That is good.
I'm one of their biggest fans.
I
How
know.
could they have a gripe
Yeah.
with me?
I know, right? Well, they don't have as much pressure now because with Bond, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole new world, a
I
whole new
know.
world.
I saw a picture of online with you and Jane Seymour during. Was that for the James Bond films? That's what that was for, right?
Well,
Can you talk about that?
I sold an article to the LA Times called
Okay.
"Where Have All the Bond Girls Gone?"
Okay.
And Jane Seymour's publicist found out about it and called me up and said, "Would you like a photo shoot with Jane Seymour?"
Sure.
I said, "Yeah."
Yeah.
Why
So
not?
I drove my 280Z, my cool 280Z up to Hollywood Hills, and my friend Bill Malone, the film director of the remake of House on Haunted Hill and all these other
Mm.
movies, he was the photographer, and we shot those photos, and I got a lot of positives from that photo.
No, they're great pictures.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw them online. Um, Steve had touched on this. What, if you don't mind talking about, the Criterion Collection was an early Laserdisc DVD commentary back then. A lot of the excerpts are on YouTube, and you were the moderator on that. What was it like? Were you in the room with them, talking with them all at that time, or how did that
Well,
work out?
my friend David Miller,
Uh-huh.
who was the head of that section of Criterion,
Uh-huh.
I was first introduced to him when he called me and asked me if I would be the commentator. They had already done all of the interviews.
Okay.
So they had correspondents all over the world interviewing everybody they could find, and they wanted somebody who was an authority. So
Mhm.
they knew about my books. So I went into a recording studio on Pacific Coast Highway in Santa Monica.
Mhm.
Mm.
I remember it vividly because while we were recording these commentary track, the commentary portions, a guy comes running up, knocking on the door, and says, "The war in Iraq has started."
Oh,
So we ran
Oh,
downstairs and we saw all
that
that
time. Yeah.
anti-aircraft fire flying into the air of Baghdad. So that was pretty cool. And I think that the problem with those Criterion discs is that they had not sought permission
Mhm.
from Cubby and Eon to do them.
Oh, okay.
So I have a feeling the first time Cubby Broccoli heard them, he probably fell off his chair.
They're pretty raunchy. They're pretty
yeah.
honest.
They.
I
I
mean,
listened to actually the night before our Doctor No screening where you were our guest. I was up late because I was excited. I couldn't sleep. So I somebody on YouTube,
Let's put them
there's
up.
excerpts of them, but they put all three. It's like the first three movies that are those Criterion releases,
Yeah,
and they
they're
put
honest.
all three
Yeah.
full commentaries up with slideshow presentation, so you know where you are in the movie. And I
right.
listened to the From Russia with Love commentary the night
Yeah, a
before,
lot of
and
what does Terrence say? Oh, Lotta Lenya. Yeah, she was like 79 years old and she was still screwing like
Yeah, I remember
crazy.
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then Peter Hunt said some pretty disparaging things about Tanya Romanovov's legs,
Yeah,
which I
no.
She
always thought
walked
were
like a
quite nice.
duck.
Also, Terrence Young kept saying Sean Connery had like a gut he kept trying to suck in and stuff. It's like it's just like
Suck it
nonsense.
in, Sean.
No. Yeah, I know.
But
It's
it's fun. It was fun, just listening to it's frame by frame commentaries. I mean, Terrence is watching a shot with Sean in the little canoe with Sylvia Trench, and he says, "That's my shirt. I gave him my shirt to wear
that's
that day.
funny.
He was wearing the
It's
wrong
great.
shirt." I mean, little things like that are fun.
Yeah, they are. It's good people put them on YouTube. I mean, because they aren't
Yeah.
gone. So it's good that they're out there
Yeah,
now. So
They're
yeah, no, no,
great
no.
pieces
I
of
think.
history, and I love how candid they are. Even if
yeah,
some of the stuff is, pretty eyebrow raising, it's still, it's honest. At least they're
there.
being honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's some of the first times commentaries were ever done. So I think that's
Mm,
part of the reason they didn't really realize that they had to run that by Cubby first. So,
yeah.
yeah, so David had to fire me
Oh,
and brought in a generic historian to just, run it all together without, and they brought them. I don't even know if they brought, yeah, I guess they re-released this. I'm not sure if they re-released the discs with a commentary at all. Maybe not.
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
Like there's on the
there's
new
different
disc,
versions.
they keep
Yeah.
porting like whatever was on the DVDs they did years ago, and whenever they do re-releases now, it's just ported over. So, and it's just in a similar fashion. There's a moderator, and it's kind of like a cut and paste of, well, now here's Lewis Gilbert, well, now here's
Mm.
so and so talking about, and blah. I've listened to a bunch of them. There's a lot of interesting things, but they're not as entertaining as the Criterion
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
commentary.
it's a good job on that. So,
Well, we
Yeah,
certainly,
congratulations,
I
man.
know.
thank you. Thank you.
Um, was gonna say, oh, you met Richard Maybaum, right? When you did,
Well, not only did I meet Richard, I mean, I
yeah,
had several interviews with him.
Mm.
Being a writer myself,
yeah,
being interested in the way movies begin, I always, even going back to my CFQ retrospectives, if you could find the writer, you would have the beginning of the story. I mean, I
mm,
remember when I interviewed Edmund North, who wrote The Day the Earth Stood Still, the original, he actually told me what Klaatu Barada Nikto means.
what does it mean?
What does it mean? Yeah, yeah.
It
I don't-
means there's hope for Earth if the
Oh,
scientists
that's
can
right.
be reached.
Okay,
That's
that's
why
right.
they have a gathering, and then
That's
that.
right. Yeah.
But
Ooh.
I mean that's a like a Rosetta Stone moment.
Hmm.
So the
Yeah.
writers always give you interesting beginnings. And this is another story. I didn't learn this until much later when I did the commentary track for Never Say Never Again for Sony. I was interviewing Lorenzo Semple Jr., who was an uncredited writer on Never, and he told me about his former boss, Gregory Ratoff. Now, Gregory
Not bad.
Ratoff, as you recall, was the first guy who got the rights to a Bond novel. He acquired
Yeah.
Casino Royale. And I've told the story a few times, and forgive me if I haven't mentioned it. I might have mentioned it the other night at Dr. No, but they were going to make this movie about the first Bond movie about a woman, and they were going to give the role to Susan Hayward. It
Mm.
was going to be like Jane Bond.
Yeah, I remember reading something about that somewhere.
Obviously, that didn't take.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. It's a
But
wise
it's
move.
funny because in the wake of No Time to Die and all this discussion, can Bond be a woman? Can Bond be a woman? Bond could have been originally conceived of
Mm.
as a woman, but that
Yeah,
didn't work. And of course, we would have not had 60 years of Bond movies.
yeah.
That's funny. Um, who's your favorite Bond ally and Bond bad guy, if you had to choose?
Well, that's a good question. Um, I would say that in terms of the bad guy, it all seems to stem from Goldfinger, I
Mm.
think, or
Mm.
Goldfinger to me is always the quintessential Bond villain
Yeah.
and bigger than life and yet not too bigger than life. In other words, everything that happens in the movie could actually happen.
Mm.
When it gets a little crazy with Hugo Drax, wanting to destroy the world, that kind of stuff, it goes a little bit off the charts. But I would say Goldfinger. And then in terms of Bond ally, I always thought one of the more interesting ones was Roger's ally in For Your Eyes Only,
Oh,
played by Topol.
oh, he's good
Oh,
with
yeah.
with the pistachios and all
The
that. Yeah,
pistachios,
Yeah.
yeah,
exactly. I liked him. I liked him. But I also like Pedro Armendariz
yeah.
in From Russia with Love as Kareem Bey. And there's probably a bunch of others. And my favorite Felix Leiter,
Yeah.
speaking of allies, would be the one that was featured in
Oh, of
Thunderball,
course, yeah, he's the best.
Oh,
Neuter,
Rick Van Nutter.
Nick Van
Yeah,
Nutter, exactly.
He had great hair
he did.
in that
Great
movie. He had
hair and had
really
almost
distinct hair.
very little to they don't give Felix much to do, most of the time.
No,
I mean, the closest you ever got to Felix Leiter in action was in Never Say Never Again when Bernie
true.
Casey was fighting in what is probably the worst action sequence in.
Well, that film has some issues, but
Well,
They show up in those weird rocket
yeah,
sleds.
yeah.
oh, and then, I interviewed Irvin Kershner. He doesn't like to direct action.
Well, that's a
He
problem.
literally
Really?
said that.
Well,
What?
he did Empire Strikes Back as well.
I know, and that's like, and the action in that movie is phenomenal because it's all story based. I think that's why that works so well. And then when you look at Never Say Never Again, you're like, okay, how did this guy who made the best Star Wars movie
Yeah,
make arguably one of the most derided James Bond
yeah,
movies? And hearing you, Steve, say like, oh, he doesn't like to do action, it's oh man, that makes total sense because all the action in his Star Wars, it's everything revolves around the story and the character, and there's not a whole lot of that going on in Never Say Never Again, really.
yeah.
There isn't. I mean, thank God there are some great performances. I mean,
Yeah.
Barbara Carrera
Oh,
and
she's great.
Klaus Maria Brandauer were terrific. But yeah, no, it was but I liked Rick Van Nutter and Pedro Armendariz. That's who else comes to mind. I like Tiger Tanaka and You Only
Mhm.
Live Twice. I thought he was fun.
Yeah.
The women, of course, in that movie were so beautiful, and that's
Uh,
kind of an oxymoron. Every Bond
Yeah.
movie has great
yeah,
women.
there's no argument there. So, um, now I'm sure you've been to tons of Bond locations. Do you have
Mm.
a favorite that you like the most that you've been to?
I've been to tons, but certainly have been to Jamaica.
Oh, you have?
I've
Oh,
been
wow.
to GoldenEye,
Wow, that's great.
and there's kind of something special about that whole area there, and the hotel down. I think the Sanssouci, I believe, is also where they shot Miss Taro's cottage and Dr. No.
Mhm.
I think that was like one of the
Wow.
bungalows. Yeah, I liked Jamaica. In terms of other Bond location, I haven't been to a lot of Bond
Okay.
locations. I haven't. I haven't been on those tours or anything like that. But I've certainly been to Las Vegas and I've
Yeah,
been
yeah, so I.
Yeah. Close to home.
There you go. There
What
you
Have
go.
you been to Pete's Gloria?
I have not been to Piz Gloria. No,
Mm.
no, I have not.
um
Maybe
can,
someday.
can you talk about
That's a
Gold?
bucket list
Oh yeah.
place, definitely.
Yeah, it looks great. Can you talk about GoldenEye? What that's like? How you felt being there? I mean, I've heard it's very magical. So
Yeah, it's very cottage-like. It's
yeah,
low key. It's not built up. I mean, you can rent a cottage on the property. You go into Ian Fleming's office. I believe the typewriter's there.
Ooh.
And it's just very low key. You got a beautiful view of the lagoon outside with the
hmm
water. It's a very magical site. You could see why Ian Fleming loved those vacations. I think he had 1 or 2 months every year
yeah,
spending it in Jamaica. I think it was 3 months actually. And
yeah,
then, of course, he started to conceive the books. I always find it interesting that Ian Fleming died in 1964, literally, 81 years ago, 61 years ago.
Mm.
And there have been dozens of Bond books since,
yeah.
all different authors, and yet not one of them has been dramatized. And I'm just
That is true.
wondering
Yeah,
Yeah.
if there's kind of an inbuilt rule that unless it's Ian Fleming or unless it's original, they won't touch it.
maybe that'll change soon. I don't
Yeah.
know. So I mean,
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens,
I
but
also heard a lot of it too. I think some of the authors have mentioned, well, they don't really want to have to pay me, because
I
they
guess the
do have
Flemings are
to.
all paid for. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm not
and
sure how that 100% how that works, but I think that that is a part of it, which is a shame because it's not
Raymond
like,
Benson's books are really good. So I mean, I don't know.
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So let me ask you the question. If
Okay.
they announced tomorrow that they were remaking Dr. No, what do you think?
I think you could. I mean, if it's based more on the book, I think. I mean, not that the first film wasn't based on the book, but if it was more of a straight Fleming adaptation, like really strict, I'm all for it. I think it'd be a good relook. I mean,
I'd want to
the,
know if the squid makes an appearance.
yes,
That's what
things
I,
like that. That'd be cool to actually see that visualized. Um, I'm all for it. I mean, it's a brand new world now with Bond, now that things have opened up. So I'm very optimistic. I'm very positive. I know some parts of fandom haven't been very positive. So
yeah.
I just want to see what'll happen. So I'm okay with that. What do you think?
I think what has to happen, if
Yeah.
it can, is to put the project in the hands of a top filmmaker.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
Barbara and Michael never wanted to hand the keys over to
Sure.
big A-listers. I mean, Sam Mendes is about as close as they got
Wow.
to a top filmmaker, but even
Yeah.
he was a little more indie. It'll be interesting to see if a Christopher Nolan or a Quentin
Yeah.
Tarantino or a Spielberg is asked to come on board because they'll bring a take that could be very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they'll bring a love and
Yeah.
a real affection to the material too. I think I always find this funny too whenever I'm reminded because sometimes I'll be just watching a movie. Like I was watching the original Alfie not too long ago, and I was it was Lewis Gilbert
Yeah.
who
Who directed it?
directed that movie, and that was it was kind of a prestige movie back in the day, and he's responsible for three Bond films. And it's funny because some folks will look at those three Bond films and go, these are kind of silly, but no, but they were made by like a real name, somebody
Yeah.
who was, making his name with other movies outside of that.
Yeah.
Right, right. It's
Interesting how
true.
they'll do that and then they won't, and then they'll kind of do that and then they won't.
I do know Christopher Nolan approached them and he was turned down within the last like 5 years. So I don't. It'll be interesting to see if Amazon will go to him again.
Yeah.
So
Well, he's British, so it'd be perfect
yeah,
casting director.
And
yeah,
he obviously loves. I mean, we just in the was it the
yeah,
Dark Knight Returns? He recreated in an even grander scale the opening of License to Kill with
yeah, yeah,
the airplanes and everything, and
yeah.
he has said that Majesties is his favorite Bond movie.
Now, there's a movie that, I have a certain reverence for that movie. I think that given that he was finally given the opportunity to direct it, Peter Hunt did an amazing
It's
job. I
it's
mean,
great.
Hmm.
it was
Hmm.
like a religious crusade for him. And George has been disparaged over the years. My personal opinion is I think George is terrific.
He's
Yeah,
good.
And I
I
We
think
just
agree.
saw
that
it.
given he had zero acting experience,
Oh my
he's
God.
remarkably comfortable in the role. And I think that's one movie where I could see possibly, since, well, it does feature Blofeld, of course, who's
Hmm.
the great villain, and there's lots of opportunities to do that. But my sense, though, is they're not going to retread. I think they're going to
Hmm.
march ahead with new original stories. The big problem they face is there's competition today.
Yeah,
Mission
Yeah.
Impossible, Kingsman, Bourne, all even Fast and the Furious. All these franchises, they steal a page from Bond every time they come out. Particularly Fast and the Furious with their
yeah,
car chase. After
Oh
seeing
yeah.
a bunch of Fast and the Furious movies, I watched that car chase in Spectre in Rome. It
yeah.
was really low octane.
It was pretty low key compared
Mellow,
to a lot of other car
mellow.
movies that have been coming out, especially like the Mission Impossible movies. It's weird. I love those movies. I don't really compare them to Bond, but whenever they hit these certain notes that remind me of Bond when like Roger Moore was doing Bond, when it was, Spy Who Loved Me, the big stunt off, the parachute, the ski jump, and then, the skydiving jump in Moonraker. It was that kind of level when it was, hey, we're going to give you something jaw dropping, something you've never seen before. There's going to be like the stunt in the movie. And I feel like Bond moved away from that, and Mission Impossible kind of scooped that up.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, well, the Daniel Craig movies have been really pretty much off and on. They've been terrific or they've been kind of iffy.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I think that to compete in this marketplace, Bond has got to be spectacular. You
Yeah,
can't suddenly do a low-key spy adventure set in 1954. It's not going to happen.
No,
yeah,
no.
It's got to be balls out. Now, Amazon next to Apple has the deepest pocket, so
yeah.
money's not going to be a factor. So they're going to throw a
Yeah.
lot of money at this, but we'll see what happens. I think it'll be interesting to see who they choose as the next Bond.
No
Yeah.
idea. I mean, the production team looks pretty favorable. I mean, they have a pretty solid resume. So I
Yeah.
mean, so hopefully it'll be
I'm a
good.
big Paddington fan, so already,
Yeah, yeah, there you go.
Well, the first thing I did when I heard about the change is I sent my books over to Amy Pascal
Oh, that's a good move. That's
Oh,
and
good.
Jeff
awesome.
Bezos.
Oh,
So
no.
I said, listen, and by the way, I gave them a do and don't list. I
Yeah,
gave them my personal opinion on how they should proceed. So I gave them a little checklist. They can ignore it or they can at least pay some attention to it. I have a little bit of a pedigree having covered
I
Bond
think
for
you do.
50
Yeah,
years.
Yeah,
yeah.
I
So
think
I'm
you do.
hoping that they're looking at it, man. I really am. Yeah.
I read their think. I mean, I don't know if it's true, but like British newspapers say they're talking about setting it in the 50s or the 1960s, but I don't know if they're going to do that or not. So that's
I just don't think that will be good for a contemporary
no.
audience. I
Yeah, I don't
think
think so
that
either.
No,
these
yeah, I
days,
agree.
as you know, the movie business has been kind of sucky lately.
Hmm.
People are finding all sorts of reasons not to go to movies,
Yeah,
especially
Yeah.
people over 40. I
sure.
mean, you put out a new Marvel movie, you're going to get 12 to 24. It's okay, granted. But has there been a lot for people over 40 to see lately? Not really.
No.
I
No.
mean, Oppenheimer was a huge hit. Back in the day when there were a lot of great movies, it would have probably done well, but it was spectacularly successful because it's one that people hadn't seen,
Yeah.
something different. It wasn't a franchise movie. The same with, on a different level for women, the Barbie movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
There's been nothing for mothers to take their daughters to for decades.
true.
Yeah.
No, that is true.
David Cronenberg, I saw a quote from him today where he said, I don't care about the movie theater experience anymore.
Oh, I didn't.
Because
Oh,
I
really?
still
Is that what
like
he
Bud,
said?
but I don't care about people
Oh.
going to movies. He's moved on from that, and he's got a new movie coming out, and he's telling people, yeah, I don't care about movie theater.
Oops. Well, to each their own, I guess.
It's weird because Neil and I will every once in a while we'll pop over I'm literally like down the block from the Vista. So he'll pop over, we'll go hit a matinee,
That's
on a
great.
Saturday or something and go see Darby O'Gill, or we just saw Horse Feathers, the Marx Brothers. And it's always a pretty decent sized crowd
Yeah.
at
Hey,
those
listen,
things. And
when you guys ran Dr. No the other night,
Oh, that was yeah.
it was wonderful.
it was
Yeah.
packed.
First of all, it was a gorgeous, gorgeous, I want to say print, but it wasn't a print,
It was
but
a digital, but it
it
was
was a
great.
gorgeous digital projection. And I
It
was
was
like
crystal
watching the
clear.
movie for the first time.
Yeah. There were things
It's
that I had never
amazing.
seen before.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. Back in the day, we would see a great movie. Not only would we want to go see it again, but we'd want to own the DVD, build up the
mm,
collection. I can't tell you the last time I actually went out and got a DVD for a movie
mm,
I'd just seen. I mean, I just,
Yeah.
it's just that the movies are being made every day, but memorable movies
sure.
you want to own and rewatch 100 times.
Yeah. Those are becoming rarer and
And
rarer.
rare. The closest I've come is the last Tarantino movie. I've seen it about 20 times.
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
that
it's
was
so good.
that
Yeah.
was the last one I bought actually. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And that was like 5 years ago that film. So,
Yeah.
so
Crazy, huh?
yeah.
It's weird. I went to go see the last like new movie I went to go see in the theater was the last Captain America movie. And I grew up on the Incredible Hulk and Marvel Comics and all. So I was really excited to see it. And I went I usually don't go see a movie in 3D, but this time I said, well, I'll go see it in 3D. And it was like the last day they were showing it in 3D, and the projector was messed up. It was the theater in Glendale, and the projector wasn't working. Everything was double image. It was all
Oof.
blurry. And I thought, man, I can't sit through 2 hours of this. And it was opening weekend too, and there was only like 5 people in the theater. So I thought, well, nobody else seems to care. I can't watch this. So I
I'd have to
went.
leave.
I went and said, you got to fix the projector. Long story short, they fixed it. They hooked everything up. They got everything corrected. They even rewound the movie back for my benefit. They started the movie over me, but they neglected to tell me that they had done any of that. So I ended up missing the first 30 minutes of the movie again. And I went, man, I can't go and start the movie halfway through. So they gave me like a free ticket, and I still haven't been back to the movie since.
Oops.
it just felt like such a huge hassle. I
Well,
was like,
I disagree with David Cronenberg. Still
I do
think
too.
going to the movies with a
It's great.
crowd, getting excited. I still remember coming back from Europe that same 77 where I was doing the Bond research. I get back to Chicago. It's my stopover back to LA. And of course, I had not seen Star Wars. So I literally dropped my luggage and raced down to a downtown theater palace weekday. So there was almost nobody there.
Mhm.
And I saw the movie and I was wondering, this is Star Wars? I mean, what is this all about? I mean, I kind of dorky. Then I come back to LA and I see it at the Chinese
Mhm.
on a Saturday night with a packed audience. And it was like a night and day experience where
Yeah.
when the Millennium Falcon goes to light speed for the first time, the
Yeah.
whole audience like rose out of their seats and started
That's great.
screaming.
yeah,
And the music and everything. It was an entirely different experience. And when you get a great movie that just kicks it, if there's like nothing, I mean, yes, we all have our screens at home. We can watch in digital this and digital that, but there's nothing that compares with being in a crowd enjoying a
yeah.
great movie.
We
I
saw
agree.
Moonraker back in November at the Vista, and I unabashedly love that movie. I went both nights, midnight.
You were braver than
screenings.
me. I
went
just went
both
one night. So
midnight, yeah.
I just went one night.
But that first night that Neil and I were at together, it was and for a midnight movie at the Vista, this was a pretty decent sized crowd. and there were a fair amount of like young people there, like teenager, 20 somethings, and you could tell they went to the movie, hey, we're gonna see this, kind of 70s cornball movie. And they kind of like the first few minutes they were a little like jokey with it, but the second that skydiving sequence hit,
That's great.
and
Yeah.
once the movie started rolling, they were hooked. They were into it. They were reacting to it like it was. I remember the reaction I loved the best from that night was when Holly Goodhead steps out onto her balcony at her hotel in Venice, and she looks great, and she's in the little negligee, and some kid at the back of the theater goes hot,
Oh wow, okay.
just
I don't think I was
shouts
there.
it, and the whole theater just started clapping.
It's a good experience.
You don't get that at home.
I know.
No, you don't. You don't. People have been disparaging the movie going experience a lot lately. They say
Yeah.
people go on their cell phones and they talk and everything, but that has not been my experience. I've even gone to movie theaters that serve food, those dinner
Yeah, I go
theaters.
to
Oh,
yeah,
yeah, Alamo, yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah,
go to
and I
Alamo
never
Drafthouse.
hear anybody. There's no
No.
rattling of dishes. People are respectful.
Yeah.
I think that we just have to make more good
I
movies that
agree.
get people excited.
Yeah,
Water
exactly.
cooler type movies that people talk about. I mean,
Yeah.
that's why Billy and I are writing comedies because we think that if you write a fun comedy, people need to laugh more than ever.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Yeah.
And like you were saying before, there hasn't been many comedies unless it's like a streaming thing or something, but you don't go to the movie theater and see something like Airplane,
Hmm.
or even something like a Caddyshack or anything like that anymore. And
The
Yeah.
or
action
even when we
comedy.
saw Horse Feathers, parents were bringing their kids to see the movie, and there was a whole gaggle of young, like 20 somethings, kind of sitting kind of behind us, and oh man, they were loving it. Everything Groucho said, they were laughing, and it wasn't in an ironic or sarcastic
Hmm.
way.
It was
They were
fun.
there to laugh. They were there to
See,
have a good time.
that's good to hear. That's really good to hear. Yeah, yeah, we definitely need better movies. And I think that television has been great. I mean, there's actually too much on television right
Yeah,
now.
it feels like
Yeah.
homework half the time.
Somebody said the other day that last year there were 587 new scripted series.
Wow.
I watch a lot of television. I watch maybe six shows.
Yeah, it's
There's
hard to watch them all.
587 shows. It's a little overkill.
That's a
But I think
lot.
they've
Yeah.
taken all of the energy out of the movie business and brought it into television. It needs to get back in the groove, and I think
Sure.
hopefully we'll get some good movies.
Yeah.
Interesting you say that about television and movies. I read an interview with Alex Garland today. They were talking about Dredd, his Judge Dredd movie, and how there for years there were rumors that even though he wrote the script, he really directed it, and the director of the movie didn't direct it. And finally today he said, no, 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 no. That guy directed it, but the producers at the time decided, hey, let's try to do a television model with movie making where yeah, you got the director, but the showrunner, the writer is the guy who's actually in charge. And they said that trying to do that turned the whole process into a mess.
Oh,
And he was like, no, there's movies are movies, and TV is TV, and that's how they work.
very
Yeah.
good. Very good.
I think I have one last question. If you could ask Fleming one question,
Oh
what would it
yeah.
be?
Ian,
Yes, yes, yeah.
is it true that before you had the conversation with Raymond Chandler after you finished From Russia with Love, were you going to kill off Bond and end your series right there?
That's a
Because
good
the
one.
story goes that once Rosa Klebb hits him with the knives, he's dead. And the story also goes that Raymond Chandler convinced him to keep the series going. Ian was very disappointed with his book sales
Hmm.
and the
Huh.
fact that he couldn't get a movie going. So that would be the question I would ask him.
You
That's a
had
great
that
question.
ready too.
Yeah, I know.
That
The interview he did with him for radio, I think, is the only recording of Chandler speaking, actually, that they have actually. So,
oh yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, Raymond Chandler is also partly not sober during it as well. So it's funny to listen to. But yeah. Uh, Well, this has been great. I really enjoyed speaking with you. You were just
Steve, this
wonderful.
was fantastic. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to coming down for
Yeah.
Thunderball next
Yeah.
month
Yeah.
It's
or in
gonna be a
July.
party. Yeah, it's gonna be
No,
a
Oh,
real
it's going to be
absolutely.
great.
That's just returning to my roots.
good.
Perfect. Yeah.
Yeah, we wanted you did such a great job, and you know Bond so much that I was like, well, we have to have you come back and
Yeah.
speak with her. So it's going to be a very special night, and yes, it's going to be and it's great because she's doing a bunch of talks, so she was more than happy to come with us.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Cool.
cool.
Very
And just to
cool.
let our listeners and viewers know, like we haven't made like an official announcement, but it's not a secret. And we're gonna wait until after the TCM screening. But yeah, Luciana Paluzzi, Fiona Volpe herself, is going to be at our Thunderball screening
Yay,
in July, along
yay,
with Steven J. Rubin.
yay! Thank you.
So please come. Yeah, it's gonna be a party. We're gonna have some rum Collins.
Yeah, so.
It's gonna be great.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you again, sir. This has been
Oh, by the way,
Yes.
I should mention
yeah.
my podcast.
Oh yeah,
Just
yeah.
so,
Do you have
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
you want to
yeah.
talk about? Sorry.
I have two podcasts. One is called Stephen J. Rubin's, Jay, Saturday Night at the Movies. It's available in your favorite podcast platform. We also have it on YouTube now. And then the other podcast is called Tales from Hollywood Land, which I co-host with two producers, Arthur Friedman and Julian Schlossberg. And that is a kind of also an entertainment pop cultural site. And yeah, please tune in. I'm always posting classic film reviews on Facebook. I have a Facebook page, Stephen J. Rubin's Saturday Night the Movies. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, X. I'm out there.
Seems like it. Yeah, no, that's great. And we'll put all that information down into
Yeah,
the
we'll have
notes as
links to
well.
everything.
Yeah, so
Good talking to you guys.
yeah, thank you, sir. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Cheers,
Okay.
Steve. Thanks you
Thank
so
you.
much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you.